Hello. Welcome back to English 111. I wanted to touch base with you before you go too much farther in the week 2 folder. First off, I want to thank you guys for kind of playing along and humoring the old guy with the first discussion board, that kind of cheesy icebreaker about the two truths and a lie. I appreciate a lot of you put effort into that, and I feel like I got to know some of you a little bit more, and also find out that a lot of you are really good liars. So I'll have to bear that in mind. You fooled me, a lot of you. I want to reveal I did one, right? I did a kind of sample post for that discussion board, and I promised I would reveal the truth. Here's the truth. I am a big fan of K-pop. Over the last year that I've been kind of quarantined, semi-quarantined with my teenage daughter, we've both become huge fans of Korean pop music. So if any of y'all are fans, I'd love to talk to you about it. I know it's weird. I know I'm not the target audience, right? Old white American guy, probably not the target audience for Korean pop music, but I love a lot of it. So whatever. Another truth was that I did meet Stan Lee many, many years ago and did get his autograph, which is in one of those books back there on the bookshelf, and it was great. So the lie, semi-lie, was meeting my wife on the fencing team, the sword fighting team in college, which actually is true. That is where I met her. I lied a little bit about the details. She was not holding a sword in her hand like a warrior princess. The first moment I laid eyes on her, that came later. But I did, the first moment I saw her, I did fall really hard for her. It took a while for her to feel the same way about me, which, go figure, to no one's surprise. And don't tell her if we ever meet. I'm actually the better fencer than her. But don't tell her I said that, because there'll be a duel. Okay, so that was great. Thank you very much for that. Let's talk about what's coming up for this week. I'm asking you to read a couple personal narratives because, wait for it, big reveal, the first paper I'm going to ask you to start working on next week is a personal narrative. And there's a couple reasons I want that to be our first paper. One is it may be the last paper you write for a college class that not only allows for the personal, like the use, literally the use of the first person pronouns, I, me, mine, we, ours, right? In most academic writing, you won't really be allowed or encouraged to use the first person point of view. Because the idea is, and it makes sense, for most disciplines, most academic writing you'll do, you want to present a more formal and more objective writing voice. And I get that. But just this once, in this first paper, I am demanding basically that you use the first person because I want you to tell a story, a little story about your life in a particular way, which we'll get into next week. The other thing it does, it allows me to get to know you a little bit more. And also, I want you to write about something that you're an expert on from the very first paper, and you are the world's, for better or worse, you are the world's foremost expert on you and your life. So that's the plan coming up. But one of the best ways to learn how to be a better writer is to find out what the really great writers do. We're apprentice writers, and we can look at the masters and see how they put their writing together in meaningful ways. And that's what this book is for, essentially. So I'm asking you to read two personal narratives and respond to them this week. They're both in this book. If you don't have this textbook yet, I've included links to online text so you can get that information if you're waiting for a book to show up. I did it this first week. I won't be able to do that throughout the semester. I can't find enough online links for the stuff I'm asking you to read. So you'll probably need to grab textbooks for the class. The first one is called Everyday Use by the amazing writer Alice Walker. She wrote the novel The Color Purple and many, many other books over her long writing career. This is an early story that she wrote when she was young. This was written in the early 1970s. And it contains the three things I'm really interested in when I read any kind of literature. Really interesting, complex characters, some kind of conflict, right? Either external conflict, like two people arguing about something, or more interestingly, internal conflict, where someone has to struggle with a choice or struggle with their feelings. This story, this little, relatively short story, has both those things, and also an interesting theme, some idea or message that it explores. So I'm always interested, both in the stuff I read in books like this, and also in your writing for this first paper, character, conflict, and theme, or message, or thesis is how we'll talk about it when you're working on your personal narrative. Those are the three things I'm interested in. Everyday Use has all of that. So does Mother Tongue, the other narrative, which is nonfiction. It's true, right? Everyday Use is considered a work of fiction. It's a made-up story, even though it's based on some of the experiences of Alice Walker's life. Mother Tongue is considered nonfiction, or it's true, and it's a story that Amy Tan, another great writer, she wrote the novel The Joy Luck Club many years ago. She wrote about her relationship with her mother. So they're both of these narratives are about mothers and daughters and that kind of conflict. They're both about feeling like you don't fit in to the larger society and why that might be. They're very different narratives. Everyday Use is about an African-American family in rural Georgia. Mother Tongue is about an Asian-American family living in California, kind of in a middle-class or upper-middle-class life. So they're very different, and yet, in some ways, they're covering a lot of similar themes, that conflict between generations, that feeling of being different or the other. That's the other kind of theme I want us to explore during this week, is that the concept of the other. And if you've taken a psychology class or a sociology class, you've probably come across this. You may have come across this concept of the other. In psychology, if you think about it, our sense of ourselves, our literal sense of who I am, myself, is largely defined by our relationships with people around us, right? I'm defined by my role as someone's husband, someone's father, someone's son or brother, but also someone's friend, someone's neighbor, someone's coworker, on and on, right? We have these kind of spheres of relationships: family, friends, work, school, hobbies, religion, all of these spheres of connection, of relationships that in a large way define us, right? Our sense of self. Outside of that web of interrelated connection, those relationships, is the other. And in some ways we also define ourselves by who we aren't, the other. In psychological terms, self and other is pretty clear and it's kind of self-explanatory. In sociological or political terms, self and other becomes a little bit more complicated, because this concept of othering is often seen around groups of people, and we see that anytime you flip on the news these days, right? Our country, our society, our world is segmented and divided out into different groups that are defining ourselves by our differences instead of our many similarities, the things we have in common. We tend to focus on the other thing, the differences, right? So in sociology, otherness is often what happens when there's a group in power, right? There's this kind of like traditional power, whether it's political or economic or cultural power, and then the people in power will often define other groups as the other, pointing out specific differences. And so there's these groups of this process of othering pushes groups out of the what quote unquote normal, right? And they're the people that are sometimes literally geographically marginalized. Sometimes they're just seen as different or strange or weird, right? They don't fit the norm, whatever that is, right? And normal is a very slippery concept, and often used to kind of like reinforce tradition, even when that tradition might be kind of made up or very recent. Right? So I want us to think about that, because both of these personal narratives they're telling personal stories, but they're also touching on the theme of otherness. And I want us to do the same thing this week and certainly going into the next couple of weeks, because it's my theory that we've all had experiences where we felt singled out, maybe in a negative way, sometimes in a positive way, right? But that we've all felt singled out or different or strange or less than. We've all had that, right? I think everybody has experienced that at some point. And I think sometimes that's not fun to remember or think about. But in a weird way, going through those experiences of otherness, whatever they are, helps us to define ourselves just as much as our relationships with the familiar connections are. So I want to think and read and talk about that over the next few weeks. If you have any questions, there's a journal that I'm asking you to write about after you read Everyday Use, and then a discussion board about both narratives and this concept of the other. There'll be a lot of information about that towards the second part of the folder as you work through the week 2 lessons. But if you have any questions, I've probably already confused you. It won't be the last time, probably. But if you just need clarification or have some question about class, please just shoot me an email or a text through Teams, and we can certainly set up a time to talk. I have office hours Monday through Thursday in the afternoon. So hopefully, and I can meet outside of those times if that doesn't work with your work or family schedule. So just let me know. Communication is going to be really important for us this semester. So please reach out and I'll do the same. So good luck this week, this first full week. Work hard, be kind. I'll see you back here soon. Take care.